Welcome to the Ultimate College Football Show. I'm Smoke Dixon. Next to me is Tom Loy, our national recruiting analyst. Tom, love the shirt, but what are you looking forward to talking about today's show, my man?
I am looking forward to the fact that we have a huge commitment on deck here. We got top 247 offensive lineman Bryce Gilmore here to announce his decision. Kind of fires me up. 6'5", 297-pounder. Got finalists of Arizona State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, Vanderbilt. This is an elite talent out of the Lone Star State, and it kind of fires me up. But you see the finalists, we see the kid. Smoke, you've watched the tape. What are one of these lucky schools getting in Bryce Gilmore?
Tom, when you first cut on the tape, what you see is size, length, bend. And you see a twitchy athlete. At the point of attack, you can see him generate power just because he's a two-sport athlete, a shot putter. You see that power of knocking, his legs on contact, constantly running. And then at the second level, you see good balance and body control, sustained blocks. When he's in space, this guy looks like a small forward getting on, setting a great screen. Now, when you go to pass pro, you can see his legs and you can see his feet when he resets. And then he has power to now absorb power of rushers. But, Tom, one of these guys, man, I love length and size offense tackle.
82-inch wingspan. You called him a condor. So let's bring in Bryce Gilmore now, top 247 talent, elite, 6'5", like I said, 297-pounder. Bryce, thanks for joining us today, man.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
Talk about the recruiting process a little bit. Decision day is here. What's this process been like for you?
This process has been truly a blessing for me, personally, because you go through a lot of stuff growing up, and it's just like, all right, I want to make it to the next level, and I really committed to the process, and there was a lot of trials and tribulations, so it's truly a blessing.
Bryce, time's here, my man. It's time to make that commitment. Where will you be playing in the next few years?
For the next few years, I will be committing to the University of Arkansas. Go Hogs.
What an awesome win, man. Huge win for Arkansas. I know everybody over at hogsports.com is fired up. So why Arkansas? What tipped the scales for the Razorbacks?
What tipped the scales for the Razorbacks is, firstly, Coach Mateos and Coach Pittman, knowing their track record with offensive linemen and knowing that I will be developed over there at the University of Arkansas, and also just the culture and, the environment. When I went there, I truly felt like this was home compared to any other visits I've been on. So knowing if something bad happens, with the coaching staff, I know that I'll still want to be in Fayetteville regardless.
Awesome, Bryce. Congrats again. Huge win for the Razorbacks.
Yes, sir.
All right, now let's go to Danny West over at Hog Sports for a little bit more about this big win for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, guys, big-time pickup for Eric Mateos, the Arkansas offensive line coach. Went to work so early on Bryce Gilmore, made him such a priority, and ultimately got it wrapped up on the official visit this past weekend. One of the better-looking offensive tackle prospects we've seen on Arkansas's campus in quite a while. 83-inch wingspan, 34.5-inch arms. You compare that to some of these high draft picks that we saw in April. It's pretty incredible. I think one of the best player comps I heard over the weekend was Rashawn Slater of the Chargers. Really good comparison there as far as measurables. But great pickup for Arkansas. Needed a momentum boost and got one going into the summer. We'll see if they can keep that going now.
Thanks, Danny. For more commitments and everything else Arkansas, be sure to head to hogsports.com. Tom, it's OV season, man. Let's recap this big weekend. Another one for SC, 5-star, Mark Bowman, tight end, commitment. How did this happen?
Pretty incredible, to be honest, because there was a point where everybody assumed that the modern day to USC pipeline was going to continue. Then they started kind of falling off a little bit, and all the hype was on Georgia and Texas. And there was a point where the Bulldogs felt like they were out front, and the Longhorns felt like they had the lead. But in the end, over the last, when he committed Friday, he actually informed the staff on Monday that he wanted to be a Trojan, fight on, all that good stuff. And I want to say, behind the scenes, Chad Bowden, GM, he gets a ton of love. But this was all about Director of Player Personnel. Max Steinecker came over from Wisconsin. This was Mark Bowman's guy. We spoke a couple days ago. He made it very clear that Max was the one that kind of kept USC warm for a very long time and was the needle mover behind the scenes. And look, there's a high price point for a guy of Mark Bowman's caliber. USC was able to get it done. There was some chatter about taking OVs down the road, potentially going into the fall. But again, candidly, when a number gets met and you know where you want to be and you feel great about it, good for USC, man. They got it done. But this is an elite day one impact guy. He's going to enroll early. He's going to recruit his tail off for USC. Huge win, both with perception but also on paper. Massive win with Mark Bowman.
Alabama has some top prospects down there this weekend, too. What guy would you say that Alabama fans need to be worried about or be understanding who that guy is?
You see the list, but it was really, for me, top 247 offensive tackle Malachi Lee out of Honolulu. This is the number 181 overall player in the country, elite talent. He's considering Alabama, Michigan, Texas, Georgia. But for me, a guy you know well, Chris Kapilovic, the offensive line coach there in Tuscaloosa, I think the Crimson Tide are going to get this one done. They laid out the red carpet. They knew that they might only get one crack at him, and I think that they moved the needle. So I really like Alabama. I would say lock to Brandon Huffman, Blair Angulo for more on Malachi Lee as we move forward. But right now, I like the Tide.
Florida also had a ton of talent this weekend as well. Who should Florida fans be keeping their eye on?
I would keep an eye on Vodney Cleveland. I know it's a guy we've talked to multiple times, top 247 defensive lineman out of Birmingham, the number 52 overall player in the nation. Miami, Texas, Georgia, Auburn, all in play for the one-time Alabama commit. But I like Florida. I think head coach Billy Napier has really put his stamp, his finger on this one, doing a great job. Defensive coordinator Ron Roberts, defensive line coach Gerald Chapman. I mean, I really think that Florida is moving the needle. They're connecting with him, the relationships. He said that he felt like family when it comes to the Gator staff. So I like Florida. We'll see if they can get it done.
Speaking of family, my Clemson family, Coach Sweeney's known for monster weekends and just getting it done. Who should the Clemson fans be keeping their eye on?
I think you got to watch top 247 offensive lineman Leo Delaney. He's out of Charlotte over Providence Day. And this is the kid. He's the number 62 overall player in the 2026 class. For a while, there was a lot of buzz about him following his teammate and good friend David Sanders Jr. to Tennessee, Michigan, Penn State, the other ones that have had some buzz. But in the end, I like offensive line coach Matt Luke to get the job done. He is an elite recruiter. I mean, there's just something about Clemson. When they get everything in order like they have over the last couple months, when they get NIL in order, when they get just everything behind the scenes, Clemson's really difficult to beat when it comes to the local talent in North Carolina and South Carolina. This is another one that right now, barring a surprise, I like Clemson to get this one done.
Yeah, Coach Sweeney usually put that net around, and once he casts that net, it's usually happened.
Yeah.
Georgia hosted some elite talent this weekend. Who should Georgia fans be tracking closely?
Yeah, I mean, Ben Wolk is a great follow right now, but he's been all over this. But top 247 edge rusher Kamari Brooks out of Bogart, Georgia, 6'4", 220. This is a kid that is nasty. I mean, he is top of the board for the Bulldog staff. You got others in play like USC and Texas, but the real threat to Georgia, in my opinion, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think that's the one that might sway things in favor of the Tide, but right now I think Georgia's the team to beat. I think head coach Kirby Smart is just going to be too difficult. When he sinks his teeth in on in-state talent like Georgia's tough to beat, and I like Georgia to get this one done.
Auburn also had a monster weekend. This weekend had some major players on campus. Who do you feel real good about that they had on campus that you can walk away and say, you know what, that's the one?
I would say Jaquez Wilkes out of Alabama is top 247 edge guy. I mean, they had a loaded list of talent on campus, but he's the one that myself and Christian Clemente, who does a great job over at Auburn Undercover, he was the one that we were watching. 6'4", 220. They've been battling Miami, Texas A&M, Alabama, and a lot of schools, but I think that DJ Durkin, the defensive coordinator there, his ability to recruit him not as just an edge guy, but really as a Mike linebacker, the fit defensively at Auburn. I mean, they're treating this kid like a top-of-the-board kid, a five-star type of kid. I just think Auburn's going to be too difficult to beat. I like the Tigers. I think they're in a really good spot.
Ole Miss missed out on Bryce Gilmore a little bit earlier.
Tough
But
blow.
Emmanuel Tucker is a name that we need to be tracking closely. How do you feel about that one, landing Ole Miss?
Yeah, I feel great about it. I mean, I don't think he's completely done. He's supposed to go to LSU this weekend. He might go back to Mississippi State. He was once committed to the Bulldogs. But look, he visits Ole Miss. He decommits from Mississippi State. I mean, this is a kid that Ole Miss is going to do a really good job for, and they're pushing hard for him. So we'll see if anything changes regarding his visit schedule. Like I said, LSU, then Mississippi State over the next 2 weeks. But the Rebels lead, no question about it, for the 6'5", 290-pounder who's cemented in our top 247. So I like Ole Miss to get it done. I think Lane Kiffin's going to put his stamp on this one.
Tom, thanks again for the great OV intel. Now, while Ole Miss just hit 7 commits in this 2026 class, they're sitting number 4 right now with 30 transfer portal guys. Now, let's bring our guy in, Chase Parham. And let's talk a little bit more about this Ole Miss recruiting class for our newest writer on our Ole Miss team site. Chase, what's going on?
How you doing?
Man, listen, let's jump straight into it. We know that Lane Kiffin typically is on the pressure cooker, but he's done a tremendous job of flipping his roster. Now, how is he so quickly to get the chemistry and continuity going with flipping his roster year in and year out with the transfer portal?
He's really 3 for 4 doing it. You look at since the portal really became in play for 2021, and he's been excellent in 2021, 2023, and 2024 when it comes to those seasons. 22 was kind of a lag. I think it was a learning experience. That's the team for Ole Miss. It started 8-1, finished 8-5, and he didn't brag on them. And Lane Kiffin's a lot of things, but he's typically honest, especially in press conferences and whatnot. And you can tell when he likes the makeup of his roster, when he doesn't. And the 3 of the 4 years, he's really liked it, and that's shown on the field. Ole Miss 3 double-digit win seasons over the course of the last 4, and he does it a couple different ways. And it starts with discipline. The Grove Collective, Ole Miss's NIL arm, and Kiffin, they put valuations on guys. They don't stray from that. They do okay financially. They've got enough to make it work, obviously, but at the same time, they are very efficient on knowing when to get away from someone, when to not go past the value that they have. I think they focus on a lot of different things and a lot of different elements when it comes to not just talent or taking the best available, but who fits inside the program, who fits inside the one thing they're trying to do. There really is a Moneyball element to it for Ole Miss. And then the other part is they've got a lot of returning guys that buy into the system. What you see across the country is it's not just about the guys coming in and acting a certain way. It's coming in and there being a standard to be set. And in the past years, you've had Jackson Dart, a 3-year starter at quarterback, going into obviously finishing up last season. J.J. Pegues, a big defensive lineman, came in from Auburn, but he was an Oxford native. He'd been at Ole Miss for a while. Those guys were able to create the situation for the transfers to come in and go from there and fit that standard. And I think that's been very important for Lane Kiffin. It's always important to have the nucleus in place for returners, and that helps everybody else as you move forward.
Chase, you said in our pre-production meeting, this would be a stability year for Ole Miss. Why is that?
Because I think that they've had the last year, Ole Miss treated the year as sort of not a one-off, but the expectation was on the playoff. They didn't make that. And they talked about the last dance all year. And everybody kind of debated, what does that mean? And the point was for all those guys who had come back to school to make the playoff and make a run at a championship. And they failed in that way. They didn't do it. And I think now you've got Lane Kiffin doing this national podcast circuit, talking about how happy he is to be in Oxford, how his daughter helped him, find a lot of stability in his life. He hasn't had alcohol in, I think, 4 years at this point. He's really settled into this program. And this year is not about a one-off. It's not about what can just this team what can they do? Can they achieve a major bowl game? Can they get into that college football playoff? It's about setting the standard of just where the program is, where it's not just a team. It's a program for Lane Kiffin. You've got a switch at quarterback. You've got Austin Simmons now calling the plays or running the plays for the Rebels at this point. And I think that with that being the case, this is sort of about program, not team, and Lane putting a different stamp on setting up his rosters and setting up what is now completely his program. It's not about can Ole Miss do something one time. Again, 3 of 4 double-digit win seasons. It's can they stay in that upper echelon of college football? And if you can do it this year with the amount of turnover that's happened, I think you're setting a really good progress for the future.
Now, you said everything great and everything sounds good. Now he's in his comfort zone. But with comfort, we know what comes with that, the ability to win pressure games. Is this the most pressure that Lane's going to feel since becoming the head coach at Ole Miss?
Only in the way that they need to continue to create that standard you talk about. I think Las Vegas set it at 8.5 wins or something like that for Ole Miss. And I do think they need to win at least 8. You've got to stay in the conversation. For Lane Kiffin, the pressure that comes with this season, schedule's pretty tough. Same schedule as last year, obviously, but they flipped home and away. The goal is to remain in the conversation for the college football playoff and in kind of the consciousness of college football heading into November. Now, pressure in any other way? No, not whatsoever. I mean, Lane Kiffin's Q rating is through the charts. He's loved in Oxford. He has been everything for Ole Miss that they hoped and dreamed when it came to that. I did a profile with Keith Carter, Ole Miss's athletics director, on 24/7 a couple weeks ago, 24/7 Sports a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about hiring Lane and what he kind of hoped for going in. And Lane has moved past all of those markers for the most part and been even beyond what Keith was hoping for. So no, there's not pressure in that way, but there is pressure to simply not let the program fall back. You get the quarterback change. You're losing all those big names, Walter Nolan and Princely and everybody from last year. Keep that standard where it is and still, win games and stay in this thing as the season plays on.
Yeah, speaking of pressure, you spoke about Austin Simmons, the new starter right now. We understand when you're the first-time starter, there's a little bit of pressure that comes on it. And I don't think that the Heisman odds are doing any good. He's right now sits at plus 3,300 in the Heisman odds, 12th right now. But most college fans don't know about Austin Simmons. What would you say they need to know about this young man?
He got a lot of mileage out of one series against Georgia last year. The Rebels beat the Bulldogs in Oxford. Jackson Dart got banged up for a series. Simmons brings him in, drives them right down the field, throws the pass in there. They score. They end up beating the Bulldogs there in that game. And that set the expectations that were already high to a completely different level. He's an incredibly smart kid. He moved up 2 years to graduate 2 years early. He finished with a GPA of 5.4, 5.5, something like that. Incredibly bright, incredibly driven. We've got a story coming out next week about the relationship with he and his father, where his father has sort of molded him into this quarterback prospect. He played baseball for the Rebels for 2 years. He was really good on the mound as a relief pitcher until he injured his elbow. But he's just got a ton of competitiveness about it. He is way beyond his years at this point. And while he's going to be a first-year starter, he's been in the program. He's learned under Charlie Weiss Jr., under Lane Kiffin, under Jackson Dart, and they're huge expectations. Now, are the expectations where they're on the screen, the 3,300 for the Heisman? That feels extreme. It feels like he's got a lot to prove because, look, there's going to be a learning curve. Lane Kiffin talks about it all the time. I think he is speaking to the fan base through the media at certain times where he talks about how much Dart was able to process in year 3 and to not put that expectation on Austin Simmons here in year 1. It's going to be a different group. He's got a different set of wide receivers. He's going to have a different backfield. You've got to let Austin Simmons come into his own. So while the ceiling is high, the expectations are incredibly high, Ole Miss is not changing their overall expectations of the team. They still are trying to chase double-digit wins, chase that playoff. You're looking at a left-handed kid that's going to throw the ball. He's going to run well. He's going to make good decisions. He's going to make mistakes because all first-year quarterbacks do that. But there's no doubt that there is a ceiling and a really cool, interesting situation around Austin Simmons as he moves into the starting quarterback role for the Rebels.
Chase, you cover this team, and you know more about this team than anybody. Now, inside the program, there's a little bit of tidbit that we need to know. What would somebody need to know about the program from the inside, from that keen eye view that you got?
I think it's what we talked about a little while ago, that this is sort of a stability move for Lane Kiffin. That Lane is known as the portal king, and you have all these monikers and these things come around. But he slowly built a really good, especially on the defensive side of the ball, nucleus through the high school level. And he's put an extra emphasis on high school recruiting here in the last 6, 12, 14, 15 months, somewhere in there. That defensive line was one of the best in the country last year. They led the country in tackles for loss. They were up there in quarterback sacks and pressures and all those things per Pro Football Focus and overall stats. And they've got a lot of homegrown talent that's ready to sort of replace those guys, step in, and take that extra role, led by Edge Centurion Perkins, Jamarius Brown, Cam Franklin, former top 100 player out of high school. They really have done a good job fixing some of the defections, from whether it be graduation or draft or whatnot, with high school talent and homegrown players. It's not just about the portal; it's the mix. And where Ole Miss is trying to take that next step and be a little more of a stable program, because the portal's volatile. It's not always going to pan out the way you want. You're not always going to hit when you got to have somebody come in and play immediately. But the ability to go in there, get the high school talent, develop it, keep it, that's a big part of this too. I think that's where Lane Kiffin can kind of take the next step for creating that baseline for that program.
Chase, as we wrap this up, let's take a look at the schedule this year and just let's see, what are the realistic expectations right now with the schedule as you look at it?
I think I'm setting it at 8 or 9 wins. I think that's realistic. You look at what they've got there, and they've got some tough road games. That back-to-back stretch against Georgia and Oklahoma, in mid to late October. You know that the Bulldogs are going to have that one circled after losing to the Rebels last year. You've got to deal with Lenora Sellers in South Carolina. That 3-game stretch is going to decide where Ole Miss is sitting in this playoff picture in the second half of the season. And if you're Ole Miss, you like that those are coming on the back half. You give Simmons a little bit of room to grow, a little bit of ways to get settled into this season. For Ole Miss, it's not dropping one of the other games. It's, they've got that loss to Kentucky from last year that kept them out of the college football playoff. Go to Lexington and win. Don't lay an egg against Arkansas at home. See what happens against LSU, a really talented group there in Baton Rouge, or it's going to be in Oxford, but against that group from Baton Rouge. It's, can you manage the first half the way you're supposed to set up the back half to be big games, big crowds, and keep the expectations and the attention on Ole Miss? I think you're looking at that 8.5, 8 to 9 wins for the Rebels this season.
Well, Chase, thank you again for the great intel. To read more on Chase's work, keep your eye on Ole Miss. Be sure you stay locked into InsideTheRebels.com. Now, talking about and speaking about being locked in, let's lock in and welcome in Bud Elliott. Bud, let's keep this conversation going. You just heard about the prediction from Chase. What are your thoughts on the realistic expectation for Ole Miss this year?
So I think Chase, has it nailed. Of course, I mean, he covers them on a day-to-day basis. But if Austin Simmons plays way better than I think he will, then I think Ole Miss is about a lock to make the playoff. But if he just plays, with some regular ups and downs, if Ole Miss has done a good enough job scouting the transfer portal and bringing in all their new players, you see here on the screen, their schedule is pretty manageable. Now, I say that, and this team lost to Kentucky at home last year, a terrible Kentucky team, and it kept them out of the college ball playoff. They just took care of business against Kentucky. I think they're fine, even with that late season loss to UF. But they'll be favored in all the games with the exception of perhaps hosting LSU there on the left side of your screen. And then at the right side, I mean, Georgia, Oklahoma, both on the road. That'll be a little more difficult, but still, this is the team that'll probably be favored in 9 ball games. So I think expecting to win 8 or 9 is reasonable.
But let's play a game. Overachieving, underachieving. Let's look at the rest of the SEC teams, and let's look at a team that might not be as high, but just be overachieving this year of hitting that Bud Elliott mark.
All right, so this one is a little bit harder to do now because this win total already got bet down a ton. So South Carolina came out at 8.5. It got bet all the way down to 7.5 now because I think people are realizing just how many undrafted free agents. And they lost a ton of UDFAs in addition to 5 actual drafted players off this South Carolina defense. And I have a lot of hopes, very high hopes for Lenora Sellers. But I think if you're not like an Ohio State, Georgia, Bama level team, then you got to be tracking UDFAs, man, because UDFAs are typically players who are really, really good college players. And at Ohio State or Bama, that may not matter. But for everybody else, losing quality UDFAs does matter. So I think if you look in totality at the amount of stuff that South Carolina lost off its team, I guess I'm going to go underachieving. But again, with the quarterback, you got to recognize the possibility they're actually really good.
Yeah, but you know what? Speaking of quarterback, I'm going to speak on Florida. I think Florida's going to be that team for me. When you look at the schedule this year, I mean, just picking at it, there's some surefire wins, but I'm always going to come back and lean on the quarterback play this spring. We didn't see it. And I don't care how talented that you are as a quarterback, you have to have some continuity going into the spring game. And now you look at it. The first 2 games, you're going to say, win, win. Then you got to go to LSU. Man, you know how it is when you get down there. It's tough. Then at Miami, Texas coming to see you. Then you go to Texas A&M. I'm going to say Mississippi State is going to be a good win. Georgia, tough. I'm going to give that it's an L. At Kentucky, I think they're going to beat the Wildcats and get it done. Ole Miss, another tough one. I think that's not one that's going to get done. Tennessee, one up in the air. We don't know how Florida State's going to be. So right now, there's a lot going into the season with Florida, but I don't think they're going to hit that mark. Now, speaking on the reverse side, which one of those teams do you think are going to be the overachieving team?
I'm going to go with the one that is just almost never talked about, and that's Missouri. They play good defense there in Columbia consistently. I think Eli Drinkwitz knows how to craft a run game. Bo Pabrula, their quarterback they got from Penn State, who was kind of the wildcat change of pace quarterback, for Drew Aller there for the Nittany Lions. I think he'll be a major part of that run game. And who's talking about Missouri right now? Not many. And yet, I think in part because it's the schedule, a lot of SEC fans that I see talking on Twitter and in the comment section of the Cover 3 podcast when we're watching on YouTube, they're kind of marking Missouri as an auto win. And I'm like, guys, I don't know. Like, they're not awesome, but they don't stink. Like, they're just a good ball club, or at least a decent ball club, pretty much every year. So I'm going to go ahead and show a little love to the Missouri Tigers here because nobody picks them, like, ever.
Well, you know what, Bud? I'm going to jump on that same train with you as well, too. Looking at their schedule, I think their schedule lines up fairly well for them. Their road schedule, at home schedule, it lines up perfectly for them. And I think that we have to start giving Coach Drink his flowers. All he's done is just masterfully just take his team year in, year out, win regardless of who the quarterback is, goes out, recruits the area very well, lands a top talent there, and show up in SEC teams and just beat them and get 10 wins. When was the last time we thought about Missouri and we're saying 10 wins, overachieving?
Right. It feels a little bit like years kind of 3 through 7 Mark Stoops. You know, people are like, oh, okay, maybe they'll fall back to earth. And there may not be another jump that Missouri can take. Like, they may not ever win the league. But, you know, Kentucky for a good long while was consistently winning 7, 8, 9. I think one year they won 10. Missouri kind of has that same vibe going on.
But you know what we got to do whenever we get on these Mondays?
Rank
we
quarterbacks?
have to talk about quarterbacks. Now, we finished up the SEC, and we both talked about Ole Miss. Neither one of us had Austin Simmons on that list. As you can see it, somewhat our list land eye to eye, a few little changes in there once or twice, but the only guy I got in there again is John Mateer. But listen, let's get to the Big 12 quarterback conversation. I think this one of the classes or one of the conferences that's rich, but from top to bottom, they're very good in terms of production and just quality play and their experience. You and I right now have Sam Leavitt as our consensus number 1. Why is that for you?
I just think his ability to throw the deep ball with zip and accuracy kind of sets him apart. I think if you're an opposing defensive back, sometimes you're playing these guys, and I never played DB, but I think there's just some common sense here. Smoke, you can tell me. Like you kind of know if a guy can throw it to all parts of the field, and Leavitt really can. He can drive the ball. I think he sees it really well, so you can't really like leave your guy and go cheat on somebody else because he will punish you there. He's got enough mobility to be kind of dangerous. He avoids the rush well. I think a lot of big-time programs came after him this offseason, and he elected to stay with Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. So a huge, kind of keep for Arizona State there. For me, he's the number 1, but there are a lot of good quarterbacks in this league.
But you know what you said well in that? It's just Kenny Dillingham and continuity. And him not having to go out and win games by himself last year. And what happened was you just saw a quarterback over a period of time, the maturation is getting better and better. You saw the confidence. And you go to the daggone playoff game, and you see him throwing it with velocity, purpose, understanding where to go with the ball, how to run the football when he gets those quarterback zone reads. And again, one of the most slept-on skill set that he has is athletic ability. I'm telling you, you give him in the RPO game, he's deadly, accurate, knows how to throw the football, fits it in tight windows. One of the mobile quarterbacks that you can move the pocket, like you seen on the film, a half-field roll, and then throw it back across his body for an accurate pass. Now, Baylor has one, and we just saw it. Sawyer Robertson. A lot of people went after this guy. They didn't get it done. You have him right here as your number 2. How do you feel that he looks right now on the national scale in terms of overall quarterback play?
Yeah, I think, just based on who we had heard, we're kind of sniffing around there. I Smoke, I would not be surprised had he entered the transfer portal if he would have been the number 1 quarterback. And I'm not Coop. I don't do our rankings, but I think a lot of big-time teams were very interested, in fact, in getting him and his OC, Jake Spavital, there from Baylor, and yet he decided to stay. And I was like, well, why not? You have a great thing. You played awesome over the last 2 months. I just think he makes throws to all fields, great touch on the ball, really understands where to go with it. As we see here on the screen, he can run a little bit. Like, he's not a great runner, but you can't just play man, like 2-man, and then just not spy him at all. He's going to dice you if you do that. I think he's a great get for Baylor, and Auburn is in for a dogfight in that first week that they're in Waco. I think they're like a 1-point favorite or close to it. That's not going to be easy, man, because he could play.
Well, speaking of dogfights, head coach was in a dogfight last year in terms of keeping his job.
Yeah.
right? And all that Sawyer did was just play, and you just saw his level play just do this throughout the year and save Coach Aranda's job. So with this kid, I'm just saying the more you see him, the more you watch him on film, he's like, nah, he's not that fast. No, he can't. And he just shows up over and over and over again and just show you that he's a quality quarterback that with more time on task can work himself in this conversation of one of those ones. Now, speaking of one of those ones, you're talking about Josh Hoover. He won 6 out of the last 7 games. He's a leading passer in the Big 12, which you and I, when we look at it, it's like, man, other than the SEC, the Big 12 might have the deepest conference in terms of quarterback play. What was your thoughts when you cut the film on Josh?
I mean, a guy who's very athletic, understands how to operate this system. It's no surprise that Tennessee kicked the tires there when Nico left for UCLA from the Vols, because TCU is running a very similar system with Kendall Briles being the OC there. And Smoke, I mean, can you tell me who the leading rusher was for TCU last year? It's kind of a trick question because they had no run game. It was basically Josh Hoover. I mean, it was like, you remember the old Bugs Bunny skit? Now at first base, Bugs Bunny. Second base, Bugs Bunny. Pitching, Bugs Bunny. It was kind of what we had Josh Hoover doing, man. It was, he had to just do everything, and he carried that team. He was banged up and played very well for them. I'm fairly high on TCU this year, but you mentioned the SEC. I think the SEC might have more upside quarterbacks. The Big 12 has more proven commodities.
I agree.
I mean, they're like 10, 12 deep of guys we know can at least play.
Now, when we talk about more proven commodity, you and I, our list kind of just shifted between 4 and 5. You had Rocco Beck at number 5. I had him at 4. I had Avery Johnson at 5. You had him at 4. What was the separating clause for you between 5 and 4 between these two?
Man, razor thin. I think both these guys do a really good job for their teams. Now, in fairness, I mean, Beck just lost multiple guys to the NFL at receiver. And, Avery last year, that Kansas State receiving core, other than Jace Brown, was a bit disappointing. So they're going to face each other in Farmageddon in Ireland to kick the team or to kick the season off this year. So one of us might look pretty silly as quickly as week 1 here, Smoke. But they're just such different players. I mean, Johnson is a guy who is like the most athletic quarterback in this conference, I think, right? Unless I'm missing somebody.
Yeah,
one of the more athletic
guy
quarterbacks.
that's just gritty as heck. Find a way how to get the ball downfield. You think that he's not that good of a passer until you just give him an opportunity and he just start just shredding you apart. Athletically, you're like, nah, he just can't run that fast. And you look around, he's in the end zone, that hair's flopping all over the place. But a guy that I really like, and I've studied since he was a youngster, and I've told this story plenty of times. My time with the Buffalo Bills, we went down to when the AAF first started rolling around before they got shut down. Go down to see my good buddy, Jim Monis. He was the GM for that team. And I'm watching all the guys warm up on the field, and I see this young quarterback just ripping it apart. And I'm taking my notes, and I'm writing it down. I'm like, you know what? We can go back to Buffalo. We might have something here. Nobody knows about this kid. I had a roster, right? But I didn't know him. I didn't see him. I didn't hear anything. Then Anthony Beck walked in, like, yeah, that's my son. He's in the 9th grade. And I was like, whoa. So I've seen him since he was a teenager. You just see the way that he knows the game. Like, he looks like he's been here before. He's a 3-year starter. And like you said, a lot of his production left in terms of the receivers. But every year he finds a way to get the balls to the right players. His completion percentage needs to go up. But I think that dipped off a little bit because he's one of those quarterbacks, Bud, that's going to take those opportunities and big-time throws. And I call them big boy throws. Like, he's one of the ones that aren't going to give you those simple gimme throws. He's going to try to sling it downfield to get those tight window throws. And whenever you start doing that, you're going to have your completion percentage fluctuate a little bit. But the thing that you and I both like about him is his ability to take care of the football. Not a big turnover guy. It makes quality decisions.
Smoke, I thought the most impressive game from him, and if you watch the Iowa State-Iowa game last year, right, they're down 13-0 in half. And Iowa really has them shut down. It is hard to come back on Iowa. Like, all jokes aside about how Iowa can't score, so they give you chances to come back. When you have that Phil Parker defense for Iowa playing with the lead, got all 11 eyes on the football, man, that is just an absolute recipe to throw a bunch of interceptions there in the second half if you're trying to force the ball. He was so mature in that game. Like, he just kept chopping wood, kept making the accurate passes, finding the opening guy, even in that kind of adverse situation there, and they come back and they won it. On the road. I thought it was a really impressive performance. It's like, damn, he's got it. Like, he's not crazy like physically special, but he's got enough, and I think mentally he's really there.
Yeah, the name that always comes up in my head, I'm thinking of the Brock Purdy, the Drew Brees, just game managers that understands how to throw the ball, how to manipulate coverages with his eyes, and overall, when he just keeps growing on you. Well, we can't talk Big 12 without one team. We got to touch on it. Colorado. They lost Shador, but they got two guys on campus, Caden Salters and the Michigan man, not the Michigan man, the Michelin man himself, Juju Lewis. Now, where do they fit in this conversation?
So, did the summer school series on Cover 3 with Adam Munster-Tiger, and he said they're going to be a little more run game oriented this year, which is interesting to me because I'm not sure. Like, does that mean they're going to hand the ball off more? If so, that probably points to Juju. If it's going to be a little more QB run game, maybe that points to Caden Salter. Caden Salter was very good for Liberty in 23. He tried to transfer in 24. I don't know if he didn't have the credits or whatever happened there, but like everybody kind of thought he was gone, and then he was not able to transfer anywhere. So he had to come back to Liberty, and I kind of wonder if he was a little unhappy about having to come back. Maybe he misread his transfer situation there, and things kind of fell apart with him and Liberty's relationship last year. And I don't really know whose fault that is, but like he was way better in 23. If you watch that team, I think the chemistry was better. A fresh start in Boulder might help him out a little bit. And I think if that Colorado offense is going to avoid taking a big step back, they will probably need to use Salter's legs a good bit as Juju becomes more acclimated as a passer.
Yeah, but I always said I think this is going to be a tandem role. I think this is where that you can't leave a four-star talented player like Juju Lewis on the sideline all season, and you can't play Caden all year just because I think he's going to get banged up. If you run him all year, he's going to get banged up, and you need to have some type of urge, like this energy in terms of the passing game. And when you have a young guy like Juju, you keep him on the sideline for a long time. I only know one place that they're going to end up. That's in the transfer portal. And Coach Sanders and that staff done a pretty good job of putting together just nice pieces in terms of in the portal, getting that receiver, Sincere Brown out of Campbell University. I thought that was a good ad. And everything that you're reading and that you're hearing out of Colorado is just how far ahead Juju is right now in terms of his quarterback acumen, understanding the playbook. And I think Coach Shermer, understanding that he needs to protect these quarterbacks, I think he's going to dial back a little bit less of the 5-man protection. He's going to put more of the 6-man protection. I think he's going to include more of 12 personnel, that's 2 tight ends, just to protect these two. But with the 12 personnel, that also will help Caden Salters in terms of running the football just because of the matchup and just creating more gaps. And with Juju just creating and being able to manipulate the coverage and just make sure that you show your hand so he doesn't have a lot to think about when he's that young signal caller at the quarterback position.
Smoke, I think you know that. My guess is they're going to have to play both this year. And yes, a lot fewer 5-man protections. They did that last year, I think, because Shador had it up here, and he knew like he could figure out where to get rid of the ball, much like his mentor, Tom Brady. But look, I think Juju is fairly advanced as far as the mental side of the game, but it's still a big jump from high school to college. And so I definitely think like more play action, more tight ends. And look, their receivers aren't as good this year. I don't think they're terrible, but they're not what they had last year.
No, you're not going to get that type of receiver production. I mean, Travis, you got, 3 guys drafted in the NFL? I think all 4 of them except with Will Shepherd is some type of injury deal that he didn't get picked up with Tampa Bay. But speaking about jumping and transferring, Connor Wegman transfers to Houston from Texas A&M, former 5-star quarterback, talented when healthy. Where do you see him fitting in this conversation? Do you think he might be one of those guys that healthy, plays well, puts himself in the conversation with top 5?
I don't know if I see top 5. That's going to be interesting. So the fit is interesting. Willie Fritz is a really good offensive coach. Traditionally, he's been a little more quarterback mobility guy, right? Run a little more spread option type stuff. You look what he did at Tulane. Typically, those quarterbacks that he had moved around a lot, and obviously all the stops, both at the kind of lower level and FCS level. Before that, last year to me, Like, go back to that game day performance or the college game day episode that they had when Texas A&M was playing Notre Dame. Like, they had him in one of those, tight-fitting Under Armour T-shirts. Smoke, he looked fat to me. I was like, "Ooh, man, I don't know. Like this is." He just looked kind of heavy. So I'm curious, like, what kind of shape is he in? He didn't play very well last year. He also got injured, and that was something that was kind of whispered about in the offseason last year. So again, much like Hayden Salter, maybe a reset, change of scenery can be a real boon for him. I do think he's got some talent, and that's probably a more talented kid than Houston can usually get.
Well, but throwing the football has never been his issue. Like, you study him from 2 years ago, and even like you said, last year in spurts. Like, there wasn't a miss in terms of his quarterback ability and his full potential when healthy. But whenever you get into the situation where availability is your best ability and you're constantly just hurt, banged up, not being able to get in rhythm as a quarterback, it'll throw you off. And like you said, I didn't see him in a tight shirt to judge the pudginess
I was like, "Whoa,
of what his midsection looked like. But in terms of throwing the football, I believe that he can get back into the conversation of one of the upper quarterbacks in the Big 12 because his ability to throw the football has never been questioned. Accuracy, timing, touch, decision-making. It's just you can't play hurt. And availability, Bud, is the best ability most of the time. If not all the time, but for him, that's been the case with him.
I like that.
But you know what? The seat is getting hot, man. It's time for the ultimate burning question. First one from X, KC Cooper. Who is this year's Arizona State in the Big 12?
So I debated with producer Belcher. I initially went Kansas. I'm like, wait, can I go Utah? And he's like, yeah, you can go Utah. So I'm going to go Utah. Utah basically did something that's becoming more in vogue now in college football, and that's kind of like import a whole offense. You saw a couple teams do that recently. They took Jason Beck and also Devin Dampier from New Mexico to come be their OC and quarterback. And Dampier last year for New Mexico, he was nasty. And that was really Utah's entire problem last year. They just didn't have a quarterback when Rising went down. The guys behind him just really couldn't play. And I think it was probably also deflating to everybody else on that team to have him go down and miss the whole season basically, like yet again. They have two tackles who are likely to go, I guess, fairly high in the NFL draft. I like their backs. I'm actually doing their summer school with Dan Sorensen of our Utah site right after this, so excited to do that. I mean, I think Dampier actually – for what they want to do, which is like heavy run, heavy play action. They're going to run that kind of system that UVA ran with Brennan Armstrong several years ago, if you guys recall what they were doing. It was maybe 2021, I think, or maybe it wasn't the COVID year. I think Utah has a real shot to win this league. They were like 12-1. Now they're like plus 700. The only problem is their schedule in the league is very challenging. They don't get like the UCF, Houston, West Virginia, Arizona, like that. They need more of those teams in there, like to just come up for a breather during the season. Yeah,
you know what? I'm gonna go with Texas Tech, and I think just this year is their real opportunity to do so. I love what they did in the portal, just adding key pieces. I think the way that they're attacking their personnel and understanding what they need in terms of to compete truly in the Big 12. I think they could be that team with the right experience, right pieces to go ahead and just catapult themselves right into that conversation. And the schedule lines up pretty good for them. I mean, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, and then Kansas is the first one to say, you know what, figure that one out. Then you got the matchup against Arizona State. I think that's where the rubber meets the road and you figure out exactly where you're at. But that's not saying they don't have a true opportunity to win. They can grind the ball out. They got some players on defense that can get after the quarterback, good enough players in the back end to make it happen. Oklahoma State, I think they get that done. Kansas State is always a tricky one because Avery Johnson and the way that they play football there is always just – they make the game murky and just dirty. BYU, I think they get that done. UCF, like you said, one of those teams that just give you that opportunity, a new coach. And at West Virginia can – really be salty going up there in Morgantown and trying to get that done. But I think that Texas Tech, with the way that the schedule lines up, puts themselves in a really good conversation. Other than the Arizona State game that you're looking at, they should be favored most of the time.
Yeah, if Texas Tech doesn't at least make the Big 12 championship, I think you're going to have a coaching search there in Lubbock. Like, you can't be spending that much money and not get results.
But here we go. I hope you ain't cool off yet. We got another hot one for you.
All right.
Okay, from IG, Brian MB27. Bill Belichick's buyers officially dropped from $10 to $1 million. Will Bill Belichick make it the entire year coaching North Carolina?
I mean, where's he going to go? Like, put Pilates on the beach or something? Like, what are we? Where's the golf course? Is he golf? I don't think that the NFL actually wants him.
No.
Right, unless he just kills it this year. So I'm going to say he does last the season. I think he has too much pride to quit midway through the season. I certainly don't think Carolina's going to fire him anytime soon. So things, by the way, have seemed to calm down there with all that was going on about a month ago. So you're hearing a little bit less of the non-football reporting coming out of Carolina now.
But I think he makes it all the way through. Does he go into year 2? I don't think so. I think he sets us up for whoever that coach in calling the next one up, which I believe that's one of his sons. When it gets to football, I don't think there's plenty of coaches that can get with Bill Belichick in terms of coaching X's and O's. And X's and O's is not college football. College football is recruiting, buzz, intel, a lot that I don't think that he knew what he was signing up for when he did. But again, what you said was, I don't think the NFL really wants him as a head coach. I think that's kind of past. And he still got that coaching buzz in him. So North Carolina was a nice landing spot where he can get a bunch of guys that he knows, including his family members, to come down and do a pretty good job. They're doing solid in recruiting. Once we get to the football season, I think we're going to hear less of what's happening behind the doors and more of what's going on the football field.
I agree with that.
Well, Bud, I know that we can catch you on Cover 3. It airs 11 a.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And for us on the Ultimate College Football Show, we air Monday, Wednesdays, 4 Eastern, 3 Central.